This is our second to last meeting, so we have a really great meeting in store for you today. And in 2 weeks, on May 2nd, which is the first Thursday in May, we're going to have our last meeting, which is testimonies. So I would just encourage you to be praying about sharing how God has worked in your life, or maybe He's put something on your heart that He'd like for you to share. So I would just ask you to pray about that. And please, just pray about it. Thank you. Okay, so 2-minute testimony from Stephanie Harris. She's going to share her heart with you. So thank you.
Thank you so much. This is so scary. So good morning, everyone. I'm so scared right now. I cannot explain you how scared I am. So my name is Stephanie Harris, for the ones that don't know me. So before I give my 2-minute testimony, I want to tell you I was running, away from it. But God put in my heart that it reminds me that testimony is proof and evidence that something exists and it's true. So right now I'm not speaking about me, I'm speaking about Him. So I'm going to start reading Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. So my testimony today is about describing God's faithfulness and grace over me. I grew up in church and have always been in church. But there was a time in my life where I was in a dark place. I let bitterness, resentment, I don't want to cry, unforgiveness, anger, frustration take the best of me. Those feelings were taking control over me. I was praying less and reading the Bible less. And I was not seeking God's presence for a while. I felt stuck. I made those choices in my life, and those choices became a habit. I didn't forgive one person, and I let bitterness get a hold of me. And then bitterness was no longer just one person, because I started getting mad at everybody. And I started blaming everybody, and it became a habit. And I felt so trapped because the chain became bigger and bigger, and I kept adding more. And I wasn't realizing that all those bad feelings were becoming my identity. But God's timing is always perfect. After I gave birth to my last child, I was feeling very sick. I was losing lots of weight, and I was in a lot of pain. And I was having panic attacks. The doctors couldn't find a solution, but one day I had so much pain that I had to go to the hospital. Thank you so much. So I had a slug in my bile duct. I don't know if I'm saying it right. I hope you guys are understanding what I'm saying. And it was obstructing food to go down. And I lost so much weight that my pants would have fall out. Thank you. Thanks. They finally found out what was causing it, and it was stones in my gallbladder. But before knowing what was going on, I felt so vulnerable, scared, and lonely. And I felt the urgency to talk to God. So I prayed for the first time in a long time, asking God for help. I knew I was sick physically, but I also knew I was sick internally. God needed to intervene in my life, so I decided to complete surrender myself to Him. I knew that God was waiting for me all alone. He's our Father, and He wants the best for His children. In Psalms 34:17 says, When the righteous cries for help, the Lord hears and rescues them from all their trouble. So God began to work in my life. It wasn't easy at all because it's so hard to forgive. It's so hard just to, let all those feelings, become out of your life. So the definition of forgiveness is to stop being angry with someone who has done something wrong. In the Bible, the Greek word translates forgiveness as to let go. Colossians 3:13 says, "Bear with each other and forgive one another. If any of you has a grievance against someone, forgive as the Lord forgave you." I decided to forgive those who offend me because it's a choice. It's a choice that we have to do. So unforgiveness became forgiveness. Anger became joy. Bitterness became sweetness. Resentment became contentment. And frustration became satisfaction. After all I went through, I was still avoiding relationships. I was the priest in our last class from Mike Moore, and I needed to be more like a Samaritan. I learned that God values relationships, and even though I didn't want to connect with others because I was so scared to get hurt or offended again, God showed me that building relationships are the ones that will help you grow and will help you pray for you or with you. And I will encourage you and will encourage you when you feel like giving up, and will support you when you don't have nobody by your side. Relationships are the ones that will keep you become the leaders that God wants you to be. So for me to build those relationships was extremely hard. I was coming to church like a Sunday person, but I was not involved in anything. But God used our beautiful Pastor Debbie. I met her in my husband's graduation of next level leadership, and the same night she invited me to Beautiful Moms. And she didn't ask me. She was like, "I need to see you there." So we have an amazing pastor. So I'm so grateful for empowering women like Pastor Debbie, Pam Oro, and so many friends that have here to support me today. It's so hard to be vulnerable. God is still working in my life today. And one of the things that I struggle today is when God made me do things that make me uncomfortable, like right now. I have learned that when I don't do what God has called me to do, it's called disobedience. Just like Moses in Exodus chapter 3 and 4. When God called him to bring his people out of Egypt, and Moses kept giving him excuses. But I'm trying my best to listen and to obey him. Pam Oro shared this quote with me. Obedience is the highest form of worship. God has a plan in your life. We need to come to God with a humble heart and embrace that we cannot have control over everything. Embracing is to letting go all the stuff in your heart that are stopping you to do God's will. How can I expect to live in freedom if I do not embrace God's standard of forgiveness? How can I expect to live in victory if I do not embrace God's standard of obedience? How can I expect to live in grace if I do not embrace God's standard of mercy? How can I expect to live in peace if I do not embrace God's standard of love? God is calling you today just to let it go and leave it in his hands. God's grace will impart you strength to endure trial and resist any temptation. God got this. Obey his word and his promises, and you will see how God works in your life and make you new. And I'm going to leave you with these verse, 1 Peter 2:9. But you are chosen, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession, that you may declare the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his wonderful light. So thank you, ladies, for just hearing me out. God bless you.
So awesome.
I just think this is so cool. When I met Stephanie that night, one of the reasons she was totally intimidated to get involved here at Grace is because she was nervous about her accent. She felt like no one would understand her and she couldn't be involved. And that just broke my heart and kind of shocked me because we're such a diverse church. But anyway, I'm so proud of her. The fact she came, she was afraid, and now she got up and spoke. And I kept telling her, we have lots of Hispanic sisters here, and I just appreciate you guys that embraced her and made her feel comfortable.
Thank you. Your accent is beautiful. I lived in Japan for 2 years, and it's so hard to learn a different language, so I totally can relate. So anyhow, thank you so much, Stephanie, for sharing your heart, for sharing all that God has done in your life. It's just amazing. And so we can have more of that on May 2nd from everybody else in the room as well. So just be thinking about that. And I wanted to now move to Dara LaPorta. She's going to be speaking today about yelling. Most of you probably already know that Dara is Pastor Craig and Debbie Altman's daughter, and she's very humble, but I will share with you that she is an amazing athlete. She was like an all-American pole vaulter, like best in the nation, and she's a Beachbody coach and the mother of 4 beautiful children, including 2 twin boys. So she has her hands full, and she's going to be speaking to you today, and I know she's going to be very relatable and very impactful. So Dara, thank you so much.
I think we might have an image of my family somewhere. There they are. Sienna's 7, Price and Maddox, my twins, are 5, and Tessa is 2, almost 3, which is kind of the saddest. I feel like you should be able to keep one young, you know, just one, and all the rest can grow up. I am Pastor Craig and Debbie's daughter, which is probably what I'm best known for, and possibly what I'm most proud of as well. I'm happy to be known that way. When Wendy asked me to speak, I think like most people, I was like, ugh. It was that feeling of knowing you should do something, but not really wanting to take that on. So like every good, godly Christian woman, I immediately started negotiating with God. And I was like, you know, I might do this, but you're going to have to make it so clear what you want me to talk about, because I'm not just going to get up there and talk about anything, you know, and, you know, just daring him to speak to me. And he did after a few weeks. I was about to give up on him, but he did. I read James 1:19 through 21 and 26, and it said, "Listen, open your ears, harness your desire to speak, and don't get worked up into a rage so easily, my brothers and sisters. Human anger is a futile exercise that will never produce God's kind of justice in this world. Humbly welcome the word of truth that will blossom like the seed of salvation planted in your souls. If you put yourself on a pedestal, thinking you have become a role model in all things religious, but you can't control your mouth, then think again. Your mouth exposes your heart, and your religion is useless." So when I read that, I just was like, no, not this. This is not what I want to talk about. I want to talk about something I'm already really good at, you know? Like, not something that I'm still struggling with, not the thing that I feel like is possibly my biggest weakness as a mom. Because just the day before, I had lost my temper with Price. And I kind of feel like I need to make clear, I'd rather not, but I'm not just talking about yelling like, "Hey, get your shoes on, kids." I'm kind of talking about like the total loss of self-control, the total I hate using this word, but it's true, the rage that occasionally just comes over you and you're like, what just happened? It's kind of funny, but it's not funny, right? I really dislike that part of myself. And so it's not what I wanted to stand up here and tell you guys, that I lose it sometimes. I scream at, those beautiful kids you just saw. So, no, I didn't want to share this part of me with you. And maybe you don't struggle with yelling. Like, great, good for you. Come up here next year and show us your ways. I hope, I don't mean that lightly. I'm like, for real, what do you do? But I hope that you'll be able to take something out of what, I'm saying and be able to apply it. I think you will. Do you have that other image that I wanted to share before I jump in? This just makes me laugh, and I like to laugh. And it says, when your mom voice is so loud that even your neighbors brush their teeth and get dressed. Again, funny but not funny. I've had that voice before. And I'm like, oh my God, do you think the neighbors heard me? Okay. So I think what I had to start with a few years ago is I was justifying it, right? You see stuff like that and you're like, oh gosh, it's normal. Okay, good. And yes, it is normal, but I think sometimes we minimize our sin by normalizing it. We minimize it by saying, oh, well, everyone yells. It's fine. Everyone's fine. My kids are going to be fine. I'm a really good mom. And all of that, I believe, is true. But it still doesn't take away the sin. And I think we also normalize our sin by comparing ourselves to other moms, not in the way of making us feel worse, but making us feel better. Well, at least I don't do that. At least I don't, act that way with my kids or spoil them or whatever it is you think, that makes you feel better about this sin inside you. And I also think we normalize it by, well, this is just part of my personality. My mom yelled, her mom yelled, her mom. I'm not saying my mom yelled. I'm just, and we pull. She did sometimes. Let's be real, but I'm sure we deserved it. We like to blanket certain faults under the umbrella of, well, this is just who I am, how I was raised, this is my personality. But it's still a sin. The verse I just read talks about it. You have verses on your outline. If you weren't sure, I don't know if it's bad. I think it is, and the Bible says so. So you can read those. But we have to stop doing that. I had to recognize that gentleness and patience and self-control are fruits of the Spirit that I was not displaying as often as I would like. And so for me, the kind of first step in deciding, this is a problem and I need to change it, just started with that. And I love what Lauren talked about when she talked about pursuing peace, because it is something you have to pursue. In the same way she had to pursue peace, I needed to chase down patience and chase down self-control. Sadly, it's not just going to suddenly come, when your kid asks for water for the 18th time. I had to do my part to foster and cultivate and grow patience and self-control in my heart. So I'm the kind of person that believes in positive affirmations, and so I'd kind of been in a habit of just, saying those things, and every morning I have a few things I say every morning just to empower myself and get myself ready for the day. So when I realized this was something I wanted to change, I'm like, I can do positive affirmations about this. And so I started, and what better than just things I'm saying, but taking it from the truth of God's word and speaking those verses over my life daily, possibly out loud. So a few that I started saying that I hope you'll find that will help you is Psalms 34:5 says, those who look to him for help will be radiant with joy. No shadow of shame will darken their faces. I don't feel more shame as a mom, I don't think, in any other area except when, I lose control. So that part of shame just really spoke to me in that verse. I love Proverbs 16:32. It says, better a patient person than a warrior, one with self-control than one who takes a city. Ephesians 4:2, be completely humble and gentle, be patient, bearing with one another in love. And Psalms 141:3 says, set a guard over my mouth. Keep watch over the door of my lips. I need that all the time. And along with those Bible verses, I started, just saying things like, I am going to be patient with my kids today. I am going to discipline them with love and gentleness and just speaking some of those things. Some days I feel like they work, and some days I'm like, I don't know what happened. I did all my things. The next thing, so I am a Beachbody coach, and with that business, I've gone to conferences and I've been reading books on success and goal setting and, just willing to invest time and energy and money into that business and that hobby, and maybe you have something like that too. And I believe it was my mom a few years ago just gently and lovingly challenged me and just was like, and she loves my business, she's proud of me, but you are willing to spend time, money, energy, effort into your business. Are you willing to do the same thing for the greater calling, the greatest calling of motherhood? Oh, dang. And for the record, can we just give a shout out to the moms who care more about their children's holiness than their happiness? Because that takes a lot of courage, and my mom's kind of the best at it. So, thank you. But the truth was, it was so true. I was definitely going to beautiful moms and, spending time with the Lord. But I could have read a few more books on motherhood during that season of my life, and those things I was struggling with. So I think just all of you are here, so that's a really great start. But making Beautiful Conference a non-negotiable. Maybe you need to take Kelly Wild's parenting class, next fall. I assume that's when I probably actually will. Just what are those things that you can do to invest in your motherhood and spend the same, again, energy, time, effort that you might spend with your friends or another area of your life. And maybe it's more of you investing in your marriage for your motherhood, right? I think that's really important. So maybe it's going to home builders. And again, it doesn't have to be all about motherhood or yelling. Whatever it is that you feel like will make you a better mom, be willing to invest in those things too. So, I think I listed some books in the outline as well that I've really loved. Again, some of them might be about yelling, some won't. One of them, How to Talk So Kids Will Listen and How to Listen So Kids Will Talk. That is not faith-based, just to let you know, but I thought it was a great book, and I probably need to reread it again now that my kids are a little older. Parenting, though, 14 Gospel Truths That Will Radically Transform Your Parenting. Whew, one of the best books I've ever read on parenting. Okay, so have you ever had those moments where you're patting yourself on the back, you're like, man, it has been a good day. I have had all 4 kids home with me. I have been fun. I have been patient. I am killing it. And then at 4:42 p.m., they ask you for a glass of water, and you just lose it out of nowhere, and that happens to me. And I'm like, where did that come from? And I realized I needed to identify some of those triggers. Is there a time of day? Is there a circumstance? Is there a situation that, is it a certain behavior they're displaying that tends to get me, from 0 to 60 really fast? So I noticed for me, it's when I'm feeling rushed or tired or hungry, so all the time. But truly, when I was able to take a look back at over my weeks, my months, my days, when is it that I just seem more likely to lose, that sense of control? And I actually found one recently. On Wednesday afternoons, my 3 oldest kids all do gymnastics. So I have to get the younger 3 ready, in the car. The boys need to be dressed for gymnastics. I need to have Sienna's stuff in the car for gymnastics because she'll change in the car. I need to have 3 gallons of water and 14 tubs of snack for the 30-minute drive. And, stuff to entertain my toddler. Lauren's with me. Where's Lauren? She goes, she's always with me and Tessa while I try to keep her happy while they're doing gymnastics. It had become a really stressful, Wednesday afternoon. So what I decided is, instead of waiting for, 5 minutes before we absolutely need to leave, maybe I should, start a little earlier. So now I give myself, 30 minutes, and I tell the boys to get their shoes on, and I start carrying stuff to the car. And it's so simple, but it has made a world of difference. And just being prepared and creating space and margin around some of those times of your day or week that are just a little stressful, no matter what you seem to do. So create more space and margin. I think in your life in general, that could be a whole talk, but also around those specific situations. Another thing I thought of recently, I actually wrote a blog about this a few years ago when I had my oh, I'm not really supposed to yell like this anymore, was at the time I had just had Tessa a few months ago. So Tessa was a newborn, the boys were 2.5, and Sienna was 4. And a few days a week, not all the days, thank God, my husband and sometimes my dad would help take Sienna to VPK, but a few days a week I had to do it. So again, you're loading everyone in the car, you drive the 7 minutes, you unload everyone, walk Sienna in, check her in, walk back, load, car, unload. Even saying that out loud, I'm like, why did I ever expect that to go well? But I did. I was like, we're gonna kill it today, we're gonna be on time, we're gonna be efficient, productive. Why? Like, lower your expectations. That changed everything. I just, let the boys try to do their own buckles and don't yell at them. They're two, like they like doing their own buckles and it takes forever, but just let them try. And, take time for detours as you walk your daughter in. I mean, I think the biggest takeaway though is like, get a car drop off VPK, I think would be the biggest takeaway. But if you don't have that, just lower your expectations of what that morning is going to look like, because it's just not going to go well, and I stopped expecting it to go well, and it changed everything. So those are my examples of that. Oh, and what I wanted to say about especially like, set your kids up for success. When I'm expecting my boys to go potty and get their shoes on in 5 minutes before we have to leave, I'm not setting them up for success, and I'm not setting myself up for success, that's for sure. So set yourselves up for success as much as possible. There's so much, more I could say, I think, about little ways to hopefully rein it in and make this better. But a few I just want to share. I think Kelly talked about it. Just walk away if you can. Again, sometimes it just comes on me so quick I don't even have time. But you can feel it building sometimes, right? Like you feel it building. Like, go take a time out. That would be so much better than, the alternative. Something else I've been doing recently, and it had never occurred to me before, is kind of responding to their needs sooner rather than later. If I'm trying to get an email out and they ask for a glass of water, either just go right then and get it, because then what happens? Oh, hold on just a few minutes, and they ask again. Oh, just another few minutes, and then it happens 10 times, and that's just, again, in my house, that just usually doesn't end well. So either respond right away and everyone can move on, or make it be the 5 minutes that you said it would be, or make it be right after you sent that email like you said it would be, Just get it out of the way and keep your promise, or just respond to it sooner. And this also kind of goes along with discipline. Sometimes the reason I lose it is because I should have disciplined them while I was calm 10 times before they kept doing the same thing. But you get lazy. And you're like, oh, they'll stop. It'll be fine. I just need to finish this. Again, it's always about that. I just need to do this, and then I'll address it. But you don't, and they keep doing it until it's too late, and you've lost it, and you probably lost any credibility to discipline them after that. This one was a big aha moment for me. Kelly Wild shared, a few weeks ago about the whole, look them in the eyes and tell them what you want them to do, and then go watch them do it. And when I learned this from her a few years ago, and I was like, oh, so yelling across the house doesn't work when I need them to go do something? And it doesn't. It totally doesn't. Because you yell it, and then 5 minutes later you expect it to be done, and they're like, what? So if you really need them to do something, do what Kelly Wild talked about. Find them, look them in the eye, tell them what you want them to do, and go watch them go do it. So that was a big, maybe very normal to you or very practical, but for me, I was like, oh, okay. My biggest problem is usually the tone and the volume of my voice. I don't feel like I usually am, the things I'm saying are terrible to my kids, but I don't feel like I can talk about this topic without at least addressing the words you're actually speaking to your children, whether said in rage or whether said calmly. Proverbs 18:21 says, the tongue can bring death or life. Those who love you to talk will reap the consequences. So just be so careful of the actual words you're speaking. Just a few things, I'm sure there's so many better resources for this, but a few things that I've just, again, my mom has probably taught me, and things I've heard over the years is, obviously no name calling. You don't tell your kid they're stupid, which sounds crazy, but I think sometimes in a fit of rage you might. We don't tell them that they're bad. We talk about the bad choice they may have made. We don't say, oh, bad boy or bad girl, or We never say, like, or we try not to ever say, like, what is wrong with you? You know, and that's something I think really easy, right? Like, what is wrong with you? Just da-da-da-da. It doesn't sound too bad, but I really feel like they hold on to that, and then they grow up thinking something is wrong with them. Just like in marriage, I've heard this a lot in marriage, but don't use always, never, ever, you know, like, you never do this. Why do you always act like this? Along the same lines, you know, don't compare. Why can't you be more like da-da-da-da, probably one of your other kids? And then even talking about them. You know, sometimes in joking, my Price is my most laid back. And I'll catch myself being like, oh, he's just a little lazier than the rest. And even that, like, I don't want him to be lazy. You know, it's okay that he has a more laid-back personality, but laid back is a lot different than lazy. So just even being careful of what you say in jest about your children. I think they hear us a lot more than we think they do when we're talking to friends or, you know. And so again, that's like a small one, but obviously more so like, oh, he's just rebellious, or he's just, there's stubborn, or just all those little things that are true maybe, but I don't think those are the things we should use to describe who they are. Even, you know, people will say like, oh, she's just a little demon child, like, ooh, I don't know if you want that, like, over them, over their lives. So I just really believe that they will become who we say they are. I mean, hopefully they become who God says they are, right? But we have a lot of influence, and they will do what we've made them believe they can do. So just speaking life and give them life through our words. So believe it or not, all of these things don't always work. I have to say I'm sorry all the time to my kids, and I think we should. I think every time you lose control, every time you act in a way you don't want them to act, then we should probably say we're sorry and come clean. So I say I'm sorry, even when they totally deserved it, because you know sometimes they totally deserved it. But I say I'm sorry for yelling that way. I don't want to be that way. I'm asking Jesus for help. And then we even talk about how could I have responded differently? What could mommy have done differently to, you know, and we talk about it. And then I have to forgive myself, and that's for sure the hardest part. You feel like you've just blown it, and you know you don't deserve God's grace, but you have to choose it anyways and forgive yourself. And along those same lines, like, again, I have those mornings where it's just like, dang, it is 7:45 and I've ruined the whole day already. How did we get here? Like, what are we even going to do? And I have found that I am just mind blown by the capacity for love and forgiveness my kids have for me. So apologize and move on. You know, it's never too late to start to have a happy day, to have, you know, kind of hopefully cover up some of those bad memories with really good ones. That's my goal. And, you know, a few weeks ago, this was the end of my talk. I was like, move on, forgive yourself, we've got this, go moms. But I was talking to my mom a few weeks ago, and Matt had been out of town, and it had just been a rough week. And I was like, man, Mom, like I was frustrated, I was disappointed in myself, and I was like, I'm doing all the things. I'm waking up early, I'm spending time with Jesus, I'm doing my positive affirmations and reading the books. You know, it's not working. I've blown it like every day this week. And she kind of just laughed. And really she didn't need to say anything else, because I was like, oh, like, I can't change myself. You know, like, I believe these tools are useful and valuable, and I hope you'll find them to be. But the truth is, we know that nothing changes without the transforming power of Jesus Christ. So I think in all of this, like, we just have to keep leaning into Jesus and hoping that he's going to do what he says he will do. And so really I'm just going to close with these few verses. Zechariah 4:6 says, not by might nor by power, but by my spirit, says the Lord. 2 Corinthians 12:9 and 10, but he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. Amen to that. That is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weaknesses and insults and hardships and persecutions and difficulties. For when I am weak, then I am strong. And this last one, I'm going to get off the stage after this. It's my prayer for us, and it says 2 Corinthians 3:18. So all of us who have had that veil removed can see and reflect the glory of the Lord. And the Lord, who is the Spirit, makes us more and more like him as we are changed into his glorious image.